All right, hey guys, this is Luke, and I just wanted to hop on here and talk about something. I was actually just looking for a post, something out of my plethora of notes in my phone on something that I could talk about with you today. So I happened to find something I felt had some meaning right now. Is we're in the fall marathon season. People are wrapping up. People are getting close to running their races and things like that. But it kind of hit me on more of a personal level, but it definitely translates into athletics as well. And I happened to find a note that I had from Coach Joe Vigil. You've heard me talk about him before. I'm sure I got it from one of his books, but it was just a note that I had jotted down. But I'm pretty sure came from his training book. I think it's Road to the Top or something of that aspect. But Coach Vigil is an interesting person from what I gather, and he spent a long time. I happened to meet him a few times through running and things like that, meeting at races and different things like that. But he seems to be a very interesting, and it definitely goes beyond just coaching. He coached college athletes for a long time, and then professional athletes as well. But you read his books, his training books seems to be a lot more geared towards high-end college athletes, high-level athletes. But you can definitely take things from that would be applicable to everybody, right? But he seems to be a person who cares more about the personal development of the athlete than just their athletic development. And so, in any case, I found a note that I had on him, and it was about philosophy. And he says, to achieve our full potential, developing our personal values is imperative. And then once these values, once established, these values assist in defining short and long-term goals, right? So once you have your personal values in place, then it's going to aid you so much more in developing where you want to be in the short term and long term. And his point is too, it doesn't even matter what those goals are, as long as they help develop a sense of purpose for you, and that's in life or in athletics, right? So if you, hard to find an example. So if you want to run a marathon, but your personal values are not ones that coincide with running, like you hate running, it's going to be a lot harder to find that sense of purpose, and then it's going to be a lot harder to reach that ultimate goal. Like you're going to have to get over some hurdles mentally and physically in order to do that. And if you don't have that sense of purpose, then it's going to make it a lot easier to just say, hey, you know what, that's not for me. But in any case, I like how he points out that philosophy is necessary in life and in athletics. And what you have in one area should and will carry over to the other. And to me, that goes a long way with what we talk about with just not keeping things in bubbles, right? So you've heard me talk about before, like sometimes people will just keep their running in one bubble, their work in one bubble, their family in another bubble, and you have all these things that are separate, but the reality is they all affect each other, right? So what you do for a living is going to affect what you're able to do for training, right? If you work a construction job and you're on your feet, sun up till sundown over the summer, is that going to be conducive to marathon training for an October marathon? I don't know. It's going to make it a lot tougher. If I have a family that's not supportive of what I want to do personally, is that going to help or hinder my ability to train? And those aren't necessarily in line with philosophy, but they all are in line with the idea that everything in our life is going to be intertwined, and it's not going to help your cause if you pull that training and that running out of that interwoven fibers of your life and try to keep it as a separate entity. It's not going to work, because ultimately that's not going to be connected to anything else that you're doing, and it's going to be hard to keep everything in that balance, because we think that we can just do whatever for this and it doesn't affect what is over on our other side here, and that it just doesn't end up working long term. But then the second thing he says is that goals change as we evolve. And this one hit me personally. As we grow and learn, we might even abandon these goals. As you advance, philosophies and values become very complex. So the first part of that is we change, we grow, we learn, all of these things. What was important to you 5 or 10 years ago might not make sense to be high on the priority list for your goals, right? So I struggled with this when I left professional running, right? So I still in my mind was that person, but the reality is I was no longer that person, but I still wanted to, because I have a hard time with change. It takes me a long time to navigate that process, right? And so it's been almost 6 years, and I feel like I'm just getting to that point where I recognize, hey, you're no longer that person. Like, you're no longer the person that needs to run 100, 120, 130 miles a week to try to qualify for the Olympic trials or try to be a top finisher at a world major. I'm not that person anymore, so those goals don't make sense anymore because that person doesn't exist any longer, right? My goals now are shifting more towards, how do I impact other athletes? How do I impact, my wife and I just started coaching cross country at my daughter's school. How do we impact those kids? How do we get them to enjoy the sport of running? And those are the goals. It's no longer about myself. It's more about, how do I use what I know and what I've gained to give to other people, right? And for a long time, I was trying to have that, but I was still trying to be the other person too. And it wasn't there. So I was always torn, and I was always never being full potential on either one, because I wasn't keeping those things in balance. One had to give. And so it just messed everything up. And now, and the second part of that is your philosophies and values become very complex. Like, I will use Kevin and Keith as an example. They were my philosophy for almost 20 years. And now we're at 25 years probably, maybe more. And Kevin and Keith are still the baseline of my philosophy. However, now, as I've grown as a coach, and I've seen other people coach, and I've read what other people do, and I've become more involved in that world, my philosophies have changed a little bit. They still hold those core values, but they've just added all these tentacles to them. And okay, so if I'm doing this, how does it fit into my core values and my core beliefs as a coach? But can that have a place in my overall philosophy, right? And so what was started off as fairly simple has now become pretty complex. But that, and that's really the definition of wisdom, right? Like it's knowing something, but then being able to add to it and be able to become more complex with those beliefs. So that's a big part too. And the third thing there is just that it's not an overnight process, right? So I see this a lot I've seen this a fair amount this fall with people who've already run marathons and stuff. And, maybe it's just their first marathon in general, or maybe it's first time using the Hanson's Marathon Method book, whatever the case is, but it was a first in something, and they didn't reach their goal, and they had high expectations, right? And so the truth of the matter is they've probably learned a ton. They've probably learned a lot about themselves. They've probably learned a fair amount about training in general. And so for me, that's not a bad thing, right? Because if I perfected something my first time out, there wouldn't be a lot of joy in that endeavor, right? To me, part of that joy is that process of learning what I need to tweak, what I need to do differently, add that to what I did right, and see if I can add those things on top of each other so that over time I do hit that air quotes perfection race. You're never going to have it, but I can get as close to that as I possibly can. And there is a certain amount of joy in that. And if you don't have that joy in any endeavor that you do, how is that going to carry over into other things, right? My guess is that it carries over into a lot of things, right? If you're miserable because somebody's making you train for a marathon, but you really don't like running, and you develop a poor attitude because of that, how does that carry over into your work? How does that carry over into your family? Does that make your family want to be supportive of what you're trying to do if it's not necessarily making you a better person, right? And so those are all the things that make it even more intertwined. But the thing is that it all takes time, right? It's going to take, to me, it's you're talking in years, not weeks or days or anything like that. It's something that we're growing into over a long period of time. But that's the beauty of it, because as we get better and then we change and our goals change, our definition of success is now going to be different as well. And I find that fascinating, right? So I thought maybe other people would be interested in that as well. But overall, I think to me, it just highlights how intertwined all aspects of our life are. And then I think about how one affects the other. And if you struggle in one area of your life, how does that transfer over into another area of your life? And it could be from running to other aspects, or it could be work to running or family to running, whatever the case is. But it's just hard. It's going to make it hard if a person can't necessarily pull those things together and recognize that. Because I'll say the one thing I see a lot of times is people have set very high goals, but with all the other things in their life, it's going to make it that much harder. It's not in balance with what everything else is telling them in their life. But anyway, I'd also say don't get stuck on goals that are no longer important to you. I think that's huge, as I pointed out with my own personal life. I think as you grow and change, it's 100% fine to let goals go that don't hold the same meaning to you anymore, right? It's like, using Boston Marathon as an example, I think I'm seeing this a lot too with some runners, is that, as the standards are changing and it's harder and harder to get in, and the person has done it 5-10 times, going to Boston is no longer a high priority for them, which is fine because they've been there many times. And what it's doing is it's opening doors for them to go do something else that they haven't done yet, that can expand their horizons, maybe travel to another place, do something that they've never done before that they've always wanted to, but they've been stuck on that goal of Boston qualifying because that was their thing to do. And now that doesn't hold the same meaning to them anymore. So now they can switch their goals to something else, and I find that a good thing, right? I think we should always be in a mindset of trying to expand rather than getting stuck in the same thing over and over again. So in any case, I thought that was interesting. Just something I had written down in my phone. I don't even know when I wrote it down, honestly, but it stuck with me. I got to thinking about it a little bit. I thought maybe you all could take something from that as well. So hope that helps somebody. Hope that gets somebody thinking a little bit. And tell me what you think. What are some of the things that you're stuck on? What are some of the things that you have troubles with intertwining all those aspects of your life, and then where you truly find the joy in the endeavor? What does that mean to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll talk to you later. Till next time. Bye-bye.